was looking at the Dorian mode with some saxophone students in class this week, and a couple of ideas came up that I thought might be worth putting down on video. If you're not familiar with modes, I've got a video on modes of the major scale. You might want to look at my video on basic chords and also my video on chords with sevenths as well. Between them, they should give you all the background info you need. Essentially, a mode is a different way of looking at an existing scale. The word mode shares its origin with the word mood, I think. And a mood is a good way of thinking about a mode. You're changing the character of the music by shifting the tonal center. So if you're playing, let's say, the notes of C major, you expect the music to focus around that note C. C is the tonal center, but it's possible to shift the focus to one of the other notes. The Dorian mode is the second mode of the major scale. So C major, D, Dorian. And you can shift to any of the notes of the major scale and change the character, but the Dorian mode is a very convincing and effective way to create a different character to your music. So let's start just by playing through this mode. You'll see the notation come up on screen, and because this is equally applicable to any instrument, I've got this for concert instruments like piano, flute, guitar, for B-flat instruments like clarinet, soprano saxophone, tenor saxophone, trumpet, that kind of stuff, and E-flat instruments such as alto saxophone and baritone saxophone, and all those will be coming up. For you C concert instruments, key of C major and D Dorian. For B-flat instruments, it's the key of D major and E Dorian. And for us E-flat instruments, that's the key of A major and B Dorian. So here's the backing track. You'll get 2 bars worth of clicks, and then let's just play one note per 2 beats. Okay, now let's do this again. This time we'll do this one note per beat. And you know, playing a scale isn't just about checking your fingering and making sure that everything's working on the instrument or that you've remembered how it goes. Think about the sound you're making. Above all, try and get a smooth transition and make sure that all the notes sound like they're being made by the same instrument, that they all somehow belong together. Rhythmically, and your intonation and your tone generally, that should all create a smooth chain of notes. All right, here we go. Okay, in this session, we're going to look at scales and arpeggios, and we're going to mess about, play some different patterns on these scales and arpeggios. And the reason for that is that pretty much anything you play, whether you're improvising or reading a piece of music or playing by ear, pretty much everything you play is bits of scales and arpeggios. So it's really worth getting to grips with the scales in all sorts of ways, arpeggios too. And we're going to look first of all at the Dorian scale. We're going to play some patterns around that. Then we're going to look at some arpeggios and see what creative things we can do with that. And then we'll have a look at some pentatonic stuff at the end. Okay, so our first pattern, we're going to play the first note, then we're going to move up to the third note, then back to the second note, up to the fourth note, and you might call this like a leapfrog. Anyway, you'll see it comes up on the screen, one note per beat. Let's try this. You might be playing in a different octave, and feel free, of course, to start on a different note. We just want to get the notes together. It doesn't have to sound like what I'm doing. Start wherever in your range is comfortable for you. Okay, and that kind of thing It's a very common way to build kind of interesting melodic ideas in an improvisation. So it's a really simple and really useful pattern to have. The next pattern I want to look at would be going up the first three notes, coming back down one, and going again. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, that kind of stuff. You'll see that on the screen. And here we go. Okay, again, a really useful pattern. Listen to Stan Getz, for instance, or Cannibal Adderley on So What by Miles Davis, which uses exactly this mode. He does lots of this kind of pattern stuff. It's a great way of making the best use of your material. Let's get a bit more creative now. I'm going to start with a note and go up one step and then come down a third. Up one step and come down a third. I don't know what you're going to call this, but I've called it up step and down third. think of it any way you like, but and hopefully you'll come up with your own ideas for these patterns. But here's this one with a bit of rhythmic interest. Okay, hopefully you can begin to see how you might use that sort of thing. Maybe that's worth thinking about. Here's another one. You'll hear this kind of thing a lot. We're going to go up a third, down a tone, a step, and up another third, down a step, and so on. It's kind of like the opposite of what we've just done, but I'm going to, again, give this a bit of a rhythmic profile. The more of this kind of thing you do, the easier it's going to be to process, to think about, to kind of hold these ideas in the air. You're sort of spinning plates at the moment. Maybe you're thinking about what the notes should be and what the timing should be and how you're going to phrase it and all the rest of it. But the more of it you do and the more keys you do it in, the easier it's going to become. Okay, let's move on to some arpeggios now. Now the basic arpeggio in this key, we're going to take the first, the third and the fifth notes of the scale. But often in jazz we'll use the first, the third, the fifth and the seventh. So let's look at that now. And of course, any patterns you can think of, like this kind of thing. Or maybe this. You'll hear that kind of stuff all the time. But the real key here is because we've got all the notes of the mode, 7 different notes, we've actually got 7 different arpeggios. We can play the arpeggio from the first note, from the second note, and so on. You'll see those coming up now. And back. And again, you can process those in any way you like. There's an exercise that I picked up years and years and years ago, was going up one arpeggio and coming down the next one, for instance. So that's going to come up on the screen. We'll have a look at that. Okay, so any of the patterns that you've got for any of the arpeggios, you can switch and swap and combine them, and I'll give you an example of the sort of thing. Okay, just a little note there with the 4-note arpeggios. If you're using 4 notes and you've got 4 beats in the bar, if you're playing 1 note per beat, or you're playing in eighths, quavers, then you're always going to be starting your arpeggio on a strong beat. What you might want to do, or what you will want to do, is practice playing on weak beats or playing off the beat, just to get a bit of a rhythmic offset. I'll give you an idea of what I mean here. Okay, that sounds a bit pedestrian, doesn't it? Da, 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 da. It's a bit predictable. Well, what about playing the first note of the arpeggio on the pickup, or just delaying it by half a beat, something like that? Okay, and that's how we can start to create rhythmically interesting, perhaps more inspired ideas, by just being careful about our rhythmic displacement. So let's finish off with a quick exploration of pentatonic scales. And if you're not familiar with pentatonics, again, I've got videos on that. I've got 3 different videos on the nature of pentatonic scales, how they sound, how they're built, why they're created, what they do, what they're good for, and where you can use them. The pentatonic scale, for you're going to play. And again, all the patterns apply. But did you know that if you've got a major scale, you've got all the notes for 3 different major pentatonics? You would have, for C instruments, you'd have C pentatonic, F pentatonic, G pentatonic, all made from the notes of the C major scale. For those of you using the notes of D major, that's D pentatonic, G pentatonic, and A pentatonic, all from the notes of a D major scale. For those of us using an A major scale, A, D, and E major pentatonics all come from that same major scale. So now maybe it's worth thinking about using those different pentatonic scales over our single Dorian mode improv. Give you an idea of the sort of thing. So here's the first one. Okay, a bit obvious maybe. Here's the second one. And finally, this one. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so lots of different ideas there. Let me just put together some pentatonic stuff, switching between them, and you'll get an idea. Now, of course, in reality, you're just reorganizing the same notes of a major scale, and all the while thinking about that shift in tonal center to the second note, which creates the Dorian sound, supported, of course, by the backing track, because if the backing track wasn't pushing you towards that tonal center of the second note of the scale, it might not be so successful. But anyway, that's a different look maybe on notes of the major scale. We've got some scale patterns, we've got various arpeggios, and then we've got these three different major pentatonics. And your job in improv really is to reach inside the scale and kind of rummage around and see what the true nature is, what you can reveal, what the relationships are, the sounds that you can create, and so on, to come up with some more creative lines. All right, well, look, thanks very much for watching. I'm going to let the backing track run now for a little while. Join me for the next one. See you soon.